Evening and welcome everyone to another edition of the Magpie Circle podcast. Sadly, another season looms in the fourth tier of English football. What's your thoughts, everyone? Welcome all of those tonight. Be respectful and courteous as always. Appreciate emotions have been running a bit high in the last 48 hours or so. Would you consider the past 12 months as progress, a missed opportunity, or failure? Cards on the table, and everyone's been like pestering me, said, "Oh, you've got to like come clean and all the rest of it." My view is that it would be a failure. Look, we'll all put forward our own views and dissect that over the coming hour and see if there is any consensus or if we all still remain poles apart. Your views on those playoff games against Wimbledon. Did we go out on a shield? Were injuries and suspension too much to overcome? Or were we perhaps too predictable and lacked a bit of bravery in the closing stages of the game down in London? Again, we'll dissect what you think. Why weren't we good enough for promotion? Let's have a proper debate about what do you think are the principal reasons and factors as to why we weren't able to get over the finishing line this season? And yes, I get it. The biggest talking point of all clearly centres around whether Stuart Maynard should be the man to continue to lead us as head coach next season. We'll talk about that as well. Thank you, as always, to our official partners, the Big Shed at the Trent Navigation and JH Accountants. Thank you for their support. And the first thing is, you will clearly have noticed that Mark Stellard is not with us. But Chloe Page has kindly joined us. Don't worry, Stell is away, can't make it tonight, but we will be having a kind of a big show next Monday, Tuesday, a 2-hour one, once the retained list has been announced by the club. We expect that to be out later this week, and we'll have a deep dive into all sorts of things. Stell, of course, is qualified to talk about footballing matters. All of us are but enthusiastic amateurs. Let's just take a very quick dash around the message boards and get some thoughts and views on everything. Jonathan Hammock says, thank you to everyone at the Magpie Circle. One of the highlights of my week. I think we need 4 or 5 new players, including a couple of strikers, and more urgency. He goes on to say, I don't think the brothers will remove Stuart, but he needs a good start next season and more pace in the side. Season ends with a whimper, says Royston. No fight, no passion, nothing. Tim Watchorn, a well done to Notts away support at Wimbledon. Superb from start to finish. Evening from Bud Chatwin. Are you and Stell going to renew your contracts, or are we having some teenagers come in that don't know the difference between Nottingham County and Notts Forest? Bad news, Bud. I will still be here. We're raiding the piggy bank for Stell and seeing what coins can drop out to keep him going with us. Evening from John Parr. Saturday was a classic case for the whole season, really. Unable to take chances and gave away poor goals. Ian Cooksey, season has been a failure due to poor recruitment, poor management, lack of leaders on and off the pitch. The owners have to accept their part as well. Steve Carter is clearly an optimistic soul. Jamie Vardy and Paul Mullin are available. 3 up top with Didsey. Jurgen Halligan, poor home record has cost us this season. Away support at Wimbledon, saw you down there, Jurgen, was brilliant. Atmosphere was the best at an away game for ages. I'm a Maynard out, though I'm afraid. Steve Carter goes on to add, I'd like to see more aggression in the side next season. Mark 24 says, a massive wasted opportunity to get out this awful league. The brothers have got some explaining to do. I fear next year will be mid-table as we need a bit of a rebuild. John Parr, not normally one for managers getting sacked, but thinks Stuart should go just to bring the fan base together. It's becoming too toxic. Royston, we should have a fans forum to get answers. Ian Cooksey, players are mentally weak as every time they are faced with a challenge, they bottle it. Some players are stealing a wage. I'm not naming names as it's an opinion, not a witch hunt. PJ Defiance, we lost this year's promotion back in January when the brothers weren't brave or bold enough in the transfer window. Evening from Karen Knight and Ian Haywood. Ian Cooksey goes on to say the club is at a crossroads and it must pick its next direction very carefully. Gary O'Connor would love to know the brothers' honest innermost thoughts on the season. Richard Terry, Woodborough Pies branch. There's always next season. Disappointed, but would rather watch a winning team in League Two than a losing week in, week out in League One. Keep the faith and we'll get there in time. David Dawes, evening all, lack of class. Look at the last 7 home games. Paul Hawksworth says the mistakes started before a ball was kicked and were repeated in January. Mark 24, the owners need to decide what they actually want. Is it people necking pints in the nest, or is it winning football matches and getting promotion? Martin Blaney, another toothless performance, and has Jatta played his last game? Oliver Horde says, I've been on the fence this season, but I think sometimes you need to take emotion out of it and just look at results in 2025. The brothers are calculated. Huge season next year. Ian Haywood, disappointed Maynard did not throw the kitchen sink at them in the last 10 to 20 minutes of the game. Expected Didsey to be in the dugout. I didn't know. Yeah, no one seems to have seen him at the game. Don't know whether he was there, but certainly no one seems to have seen him. Chris Gosling, before I get involved in the head coach debate, thank you to the 900 odd other fans who made that away end something special on Saturday. Really superb support and deserved a better outcome. Evening all from Pythagorean. The downward trends on home form are really concerned. This season has to go down as a missed opportunity. Heather Kelk, I hope by the end of the week we are looking for a new head coach with the ability to change a game while in progress. Saturday's starting lineup was so predictable. Slow, boring, don't shoot footy. Paul Hawksworth, let's be honest, where would the current squad finish if the season started tomorrow? Luke Beardsley, good old Luke. Yeah, miss seeing him down the Virgin Active Gym. Good evening from a sunny but windy Rhodes. And it's Rhodes, Rhodes, one of the Greek islands. He's not filling the potholes in on the A612 on Carlton Hill. Kenneth Pointer, evening, what a wasteful season. Ian Cooksey, I don't get the continuity if it wasn't for the brothers. At the end of the day, we've had 5 playoff campaigns under their ownership and lost 4. Paul says 28 wins in 75 games isn't great. Some people say progress has been made, but Stuart took over with us in 6th place and we finished this season in 6th. Martin Blaney, the football under Maynard has become very boring. I hate to say it. John Gadsby, big disappointment and failure this year. A club our size with our attendances, infrastructure and budget should definitely have been promoted from what was a very average league. To have such few shots on target from Rhodes in Greece, Luke Beardsley says, is terrible. Martin Shipley, evening all, I think Stuart will remain and deserves to be given the opportunity to lead us next season. More goal threat and a creative midfielder are much needed. And I would point out, although it does seem quite heavily weighted in terms of dissatisfaction, anybody and everyone with a valid constructive opinion very, very welcome to post on the message board and make your points. This is an active debate for all Notts fans. Obviously, there's literally loads coming in. I'll take a break for my voice, if nothing else. Chloe, from the gloom from which you are shining out on the screen. Right, okay. I think you had coming down from Lancashire. You've done about what 17 or 18 stamps on your passport for Notts away games this season. So, I mean, the question I posed at the start of the programme, do you consider this season progress, a missed opportunity, or a failure?
It's a difficult one. In terms of league position, it's quite clearly progress to where we finished last season. I do think a lot of that's down to getting a whole new defence, to be totally honest. From where we finished last season off, that was blatantly obvious. It was blatantly obvious in the season where we got promoted what needed to happen. That didn't happen, and therefore we kind of slipped down the league a little bit. We've then come into this season with what we wanted out of it, really. And that really did show, especially in the first half of the season. And I think a lot of people will agree some of our best players this season are Platt, Bedo and Bass. Obviously, we had Bass missing for a number of games, especially during the middle of the season. I do think it's a massive opportunity missed. I think not only just losing in the playoffs, not even getting to Wembley and having the chance to go up via the playoffs, a massive opportunity missed in terms of automatics. Now, I'm sure a lot of other clubs will say the same thing. And there was a lot of clubs in with a shout for a very long time for them automatic spots, especially the last one. And it was almost like we were getting given a lifeline by a lot of other clubs not winning, especially, like I say, in those last 10 or so games. And when we should have been out of sight of that third spot, we were still there. The one for me that I go back to is the Bradford away game. It was probably one of my most enjoyable games of the whole season. The atmosphere was great under the lights, a big game just before the end of the season. And yes, it was a much more positive performance and a bit of an uplift from some not great results. We needed to come out of that with a win, and then the season kind of plateaued from there. I think Notts fans kind of got strung along on this little glimmer of hope for a very long time. And you do get dragged into it, especially when it's still possible to get one of those automatic places. But yeah, in terms of what we set out to do at the start of the season, and probably even from January onwards, it does feel like a bit of a failure, and it just seems to have got a little bit worse as we've kept going. Like I say, it's not all negative, of course it's not, and we're answering this back on a playoff loss, and not only a playoff loss, we kept ourselves in it in that first game at home. Like I say, we can go about refereeing decisions and injuries and other variables as to why we didn't get promoted. I'm sure we'll go into all of that. But we went into that home game against Wimbledon looking like a decent side, creating some good chances. Again, story of our season, not putting them away, especially at home. But again, we got strung along a little bit because we were only 1-0 down. We're better away from home. Let's go down to Wimbledon. They can't sit back for 90 minutes with only being a goal in front. And so we thought, and we had a chat before the game. And again, I'm sure we'll get into that lineup, and a lot of people have touched on it before we do. But we said the last thing that we want to do is concede an early goal. We'd like to get one, of course we would, but Saturday went the opposite of everything that we needed to happen. We had one shot on target, which I think came from outside the box. There really wasn't a lot to sing about. However, it was probably the best atmosphere that I've been in all season. It was a really good atmosphere. It was a really good environment. And like I say, we really didn't have much to shout about, but it was great to see all of the Notts fans club together. I wasn't sure what the reaction was going to be. Obviously, I knew that was going to depend on how the game was going, but credit to every single one of them. And there's been a lot of Notts fans this year turned up, home, away, seen some not great stuff, but on the other side, have seen some good stuff during the season, which is why we were able to make the playoffs in the end. But of course, it is that massive opportunity missed, and it does feel like a failure at the moment. And I'm sure the brothers going into this season were expecting is a difficult word to use, but extremely hopeful about the possibility of getting promoted and one of those top 3 spots, never mind the playoffs. So it's hard to look at now as a positive season, but I'm sure that there's things that we can take away from it.
Okay, I'll give you my thoughts in a moment. Let's just go back to the message boards, and I've just been quickly scanning your many messages, and they're all respectful. No one's being, no yellow cards and red cards from what I can see need to be required to be admonished. Here we go. So Jake says Stewart wasn't given the tools in January to succeed this season, so he will lose his job. However, I definitely feel for him. John Parr, I do think things at the January window has proved to be very poor. No goals except McGoldrick and Jatta have cost us in the end. In my opinion, losing Crowley and the Saunders brothers has cost us, says Duncan Comrie. Heather Kelk says Jarvis should have started. Why didn't we put up a centre back for the last 10 minutes? A very poor coach. John Gadsby, we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's so frustrating. AD Clark, evening to AD. Stewart won't be going anywhere. Think he's a nice guy, but needs a strong number 2. He doesn't seem to inspire the players. Likewise, really nice guy, but wouldn't get you to run through a brick wall. Simon Blair, I think that we have progressed overall, but there seems a lack of urgency. It was very frustrating on Saturday, especially in the second half. Ethan McCall says owners need to put a statement out soon about Stewart. Anyone know if a fans forum is planned? Need experience bringing into the squad, says Ray Newton. Thank you for the show from Graham Oates. Thank you, Graham. Our pleasure. Chris Gosling says, now Bradford are gone, Notts are the biggest club in League Two. We need a head coach who can encapsulate that. Sadly, Stewart doesn't have that mentality, and we need to act and behave like a big club. Think of all the messages I've read out so far. That's probably, I would say, the best one so far. And for me, I think encapsulates the current situation or the current challenge that the club faces. Richard Terry, we definitely need an aggressive striker. Regarding the coach, leave the decisions to the professionals. Paul Edgar, season was a failure. Stewart couldn't get the best out of the players, unlike Luke. Paul, the role of the head coach is to improve players, and that hasn't really been the case. If anything, some players have regressed as the season has gone on. Colin Metcalf, there are lots of factors which have contributed to our failure. The whole season has been a series of bad luck and mistakes. I feel let down by the whole thing, especially the January transfer window. Gazali, can we stop these nice guy comments, please? Nice guys have not got us anywhere. Elvis Bott need a good pre-season and another trip to Duisburg, says Elvis. Colin Metcalf, accountability is required, not blame. If people take their share of accountability, we can get it right. Chris Gosling goes on to say that Stewart said pre-match the injury suspension was an opportunity to do something different. He did exactly the opposite. And Wimbledon must have been rubbing their hands, and leaving Jarvis out on the subs bench was criminal. Senga Schmidt supported Notts for 70 years, seen a lot of managers. Maynard is in the bottom 3. Keep him and we go back to non-league. Ferntech says, lacked the guile and aggression to seize the opportunity that this campaign presented to us. Form since February suggests we are in for a tough start next year, and many teams can't be as poor as they were this year. No more nice guys wanted at Notts, says Gazali. I'm sick of the drab possession football. We need to get nasty, and Stewart don't have it. Mr. Frustrating needs to be gone. Big Meech, gutted but not surprised. Jatta has been missing since January. Traore not given enough game time, and Jody not match fit. Not ruthless enough. Losing games we should have won. John Gadsby, just one shot on target in a game we had to win. Shows just how inept our tactics were on the day. But Chatwin's slightly different. Positive season, says Bud. All I wanted was playoffs and a better defence. We did that. Next year we can win it. There you go. Greza Maxwell, win ratios are 37% for Stewart, 57.8 for Luke. Ian Birchinall 51.4, Neil Lardley 42.6. Yeah, I mean, me and Graz have a bit of banter. I think, like a lot of the statistics that we seem to obsess about at this club at the moment, I think they're entirely meaningless. I don't think you can compare win ratios in non-league, because that's what the National League is, to managers playing in the Football League. So to be fair on that one, I wouldn't blame Stuart for having a lower percentage of wins compared to previous managers. Crikey, if Ian Birchinall can get 51.4% in the Mickey Mouse League, that tells you all you need to know about how statistics can be distorted. Pattocking show, whatever that is, get Stallard in. He talks more sense than Maynard and would do a better job. I did notice someone pointed out to me, Chloe, I think in all seriousness, that having watched Stell on the Magpie Circle, the brothers should get him in as manager, which I thought was quite funny, and he was in all seriousness. Please, no conspiracy theories. Stell is away at the minute, out the country. He is not in talks with the brothers. Okay, about any opportunities at Meadow Lane. Hady Clark honestly didn't think we'd score at Wimbledon, didn't have any expectations. Predictable lineup. Jackson said it was like gaining another goal when he heard Didsey was also out alongside Jatta. Luke Beardsley, we need a winner in the dugout and more winners in the starting 11. Matthew Hoyland, honestly, I'm starting to think the longer they don't make a statement about it and the season as a whole, it's making it more likely that he will be going. Adam Kent, we need a poacher striker for next season. Macca, obviously. Paul Mullin would be a shout. Traore was touted as this, but has failed to deliver so far. I would rather see out-and-out wingers rather than wing-backs. Ian Cooksey, the owners run their business and the club based on data and stats. Well, here's one, including the playoffs. We've played 14 games against the top 7 this season, and we've won 2. Big Meech, 35 points out of a possible 72. 1.36 points per game. Dane Vincent, Stuart has kneecapped us all year with his tactics, regularly sticking with an approach that doesn't work. The difference in mentality from the Williams days is night and day. Heather Kelk, Stuart is a poor coach. Slow, even slower, boring football. Never changes anything. Like for like substitutions. He has been a 16-month disaster. January Costas, says Harry Pye. Big Meech, Stellard for manager. More stats on Stuart's record from Phil Summo. I've never seen a manager divide a Notts fan base as much as Stuart has. It can't be good for the club, says Ian Cooksey. I think there are parallels with Ian Birchinall, and I'd perhaps argue Ian polarised it even more, but I kind of get the point that you're making. Possession-based football does not win enough matches. Look at Man City. They have been found out. Kyle Motson, if the brothers are sticking with Stuart, he needs to be backed with some serious depth. We aren't a million miles away, but the second half of the season really exposed our lack of quality and depth. Jason Cartwright, can you imagine Luke Williams with that squad? We'd have won the league. Adam Kent, Stuart will not be replaced. He is in contract and improving. He needs strong support around him. Dale Pike, only 75 days to it all starts again. It's early August this year, isn't it, with the World Cup coming up, so it's an early start to the season. We'll probably be playing friendlies first week of July. Neil Ho 21, I think Stuart's position is untenable. No club can gain promotion with the bed sheets and our first game next season. Heather Kelk goes on, we still bought our 6 season tickets, even though there's a chance Stuart will still be in there. Robert Cretan Hero, the owners are in, as he puts it in inverted commas, a bit of a pickle. A statement of support for Stuart Maynard will be seen as a dreaded vote of confidence. No statement will be seen as a vote of no confidence. Who'd be an owner. Kay says nothing personal, but I feel that he has to go. I've never been so bored at home matches, and the fan base at times has been toxic. Jason Cartwright, the performance at Bradford was much better. However, we still didn't win. Story of the season in games that we've performed better. Kyle Motson, the fact we went into the last few weeks with a shot at the top three, despite only winning something like 3 from 20 games, shows what a poor league it was this year. Massive opportunity missed. Okay, I'll break off. There's still a lot more to get through. I'll just give you a quick, overview of where I am with it. My big concern for the club at the minute is we all know that we attach a great deal of importance to data. Yeah, and that I understand that. I understand that. What irritates me a lot is the focus on performance, not on results. And I kind of have this. I was thinking about this, sat in the conservatory yesterday, and I kind of think there's not a winning mentality in the club. There's not a real desire to win games of football. It appears to be more about turning in a really good performance, dominating possession, and that in turn leads to you maximising your points return. I don't get that. Honestly, I really don't get that. Win at all costs. The Roy Keane quote from a few weeks ago, the only philosophy he is interested in is a winning one as a player and as a manager. And I just think somehow along the way, we've become a hostage to data. I think I said before the playoffs, before the Doncaster game, I said, I will guarantee you that we will have the lion's share of possession in all these games and in every game that we play off in the playoffs. And we did. So we had something like 68% possession against Doncaster. They schooled us. They had, and I think in the Wimbledon games, we had something like 70 to 75% possession in both games. Yes, we played well and were nearly men in the first game. But it was a great atmosphere. We did our bit, Chloe, but I thought we got schooled by Wimbledon again. Yet we had 70% possession. And even things like Stuart was talking the week before the second game, we need to respond. We need a good performance. And we don't need a good performance. We need a result. We need to score 2 goals. Yeah. And I hear sometimes the players talking about performance, and they got all the GPS stats in the back of the shirt. It comes out, make sure you've done your runs, make sure you've done this. And I just think we're becoming so obsessed about data that we're forgetting what the primary cause of going out onto a football pitch is. I very, very, very rarely ever hear Stuart talk about results. Very rarely. Everything is a performance. And I think, I think we're losing our way. I think we're losing our way a bit, and I think performance has become an excuse for not winning games. Philosophies are easy to create. Chloe can create a philosophy for Notts County Football Club. I can create a philosophy for Notts County Football Club. Every single one who's posted on here tonight can create a philosophy for Notts County Football Club. The philosophy is easy. The hard part is winning the games. And that's where I think we are. And let's boil all this down. I think the whole culture of the club, I don't think is focused enough on winning games. And I think, the big hot topic at the moment is Stuart Maynard a winner? That's really what it all boils down to. Stuart doesn't have a promotion on his CV. Okay? Luke Williams didn't have a promotion on his CV, but got one with Notts. He had a relegation on his CV. Ian Birchinall didn't have a promotion on his CV, didn't get one with Notts, and I'll be staggered if as a number one he ever gets a promotion in his career. He has already got 2 relegations on his CV, if you count the Forest Green one, which I'm sure all Forest Green fans do. But I took a look at the managers of the clubs that have won promotion in each of the last 2 seasons, automatics. So this year, Doncaster, Grant McCann has now got 4 promotions as a manager. Darren Moore has got 2. Sorry, to get the right way around. Graham Alexander, 2. The previous year, Phil Parkinson has got 6. 6 promotions. Where are we? Dave Challoner, 3, and I'm not counting the ones at Colwyn Bay and Fyle. Okay, so he's got 3 proper promotions. Nigel Clough has got 3. The reality of the situation, however much we talk about managers, head coaches, for me, the club needs an experienced manager who is comfortable delivering promotion, getting back to Chris's point. But I think the reality under the way that the brothers operate this football club is I don't think any one of those 6 people that I have just mentioned would come to Notts County because of the parameters. And I'm not saying they're wrong, right? There's 15 to 25 million reasons why the brothers make all these decisions, because it's their money and they put a lot of money into the club. But the last thing absolutely any of us wants is that the brothers start to get criticism, given they saved the club when it was on real rocky ground 6 years ago. 6 years on, we've had 1 promotion and it's cost them 15 million quid. For me, that's kind of a barely acceptable return for the investment. I use the word very loosely, the investment that they've made in this football club. And as someone else said there, we are at a crossroads, I think, this summer. We are at a crossroads. My gut feel, I think they will keep Stewart in situ. I think they will look to bring in some more experienced, not 1, probably 2 assistants to Stewart. I think potentially with recruitment, their recruitment on defensively last year was, I thought, 9.5 out of 10. Bedo, brilliant. Platt, brilliant. Bassett, they've had a lot of problems with the data metrics getting the goalkeepers. Got through about 7. Top draw. So I think they did really well there. But then, like most of you out there, I was really underwhelmed with the January transfer window. And this kind of comes back to the urgency and winning football matches. Those players that they signed, I don't think helped give us a better chance of getting promoted in January. It's not to say they're not good players. Again, doing a bit of research. When we played Doncaster, you'll remember Rob Street played up front, took the first goal really well. Good player, good striker. He was on loan from Lincoln. Doncaster and Notts were both on level points going into the first week of January. Notts clearly needed to strengthen. Grant McCann identified Rob Street from Lincoln. They took him on loan. He scored 12 goals in 22 games. We signed 4 players. I don't think combined aggregate of all of those 4 players started a total of 22 games for us. So clearly Stewart is kind of thinking, are these guys ready or not to be playing football? And people go on about how Doncaster were the best team in the league. We were dead level with them in January, right? I think it's an example there of Doncaster identifying a player that they needed, that played games, made an instant impact, scored goals, they win the title, and everyone goes, oh yeah, well, Doncaster have been the best team all season. You speak to Doncaster fans, they will say the reason they won the league was because Rob Street came in on loan. And I cannot not believe that our recruitment would not have known about a centre forward 35 miles west of Nottingham. So they're just examples. Anyway, enough. Chloe, what happens next then? What happens next? What do you think is going to happen?
I think he stays. I think that's how the club are built at the minute. We're very much built with this style of play. Like you say, very data and stats driven. Obviously, the stats of this season are we didn't go up, and it'll be looking at the reasons as to why. I think it will stay with Stewart, with him being a head coach. I think a lot, like you say, needs to be looked into the backroom staff of the coaching. Clearly, that's been an issue for us this season, and it's definitely not gone unnoticed as a fan. And I think you can see that on the pitch as well. I think, like you say, maybe back to the drawing board a little bit. The retain list is going to be interesting. I think the biggest one people are looking out for is David McGoldrick. I have no idea what he's going to do, to be completely honest. And it'll be really interesting because obviously he's a Notts County boy, and if he ends up at a different club, I don't think this is his career done. It'll be really interesting to see if it's not at Notts County where that is and why that is. Like you say, I think we've spoken. A lot of people have said about pace. I think we really need pace. Really looking at the list of players under contract, it's the depth of the squad is really still under contract. So I don't think there's going to be massive movement. Obviously, we need to get a few in, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement anytime soon. Anyway, like you say, everybody looks at it this year, and yes, it's been a season with big missed opportunities in terms of, I look at the style of play. I've watched nearly every team in this league now, most of them twice over, and I haven't been impressed by many. Disappointed by the way that we've gone into some of them games, absolutely. But essentially, like you say, they've been able to get the results over the line. I don't think anybody's been over the course of the whole season, consistent with performances. Yet there's teams that have finished above us. There's teams that are going further than us in the playoffs. I know, like you say, it is obviously all about results, and it really is understanding from the brothers about what is the most important. Obviously, sustainability is massive for them. But of course, progression will be as well. And we've had 10,000 fans on average at home every single game, whether win, loss or draw. And the results haven't been great. A lot of the performances haven't been great. Like you say, it is frustrating to hear the buzzwords in a lot of the interviews about performances and things like that. And to me, performances are important. As a fan that goes home and away and sees 75% of the games throughout the year, the cup games, the league games, it is, of course, I want to go and I want to get off my seat and I want to watch something that's entertaining. Now, unfortunately, I think quite a lot of this season hasn't been, and the results haven't matched either. So we're getting neither, really. I mean, obviously, it's not as negative as that. Otherwise, we would have finished bottom of the league. Of course, it's been a little bit better than that. And like you say, the frustrating games come against the teams in and around us. And like everybody said, that it boils down to not being able to put a performance in against a big crowd for a big game. I mean, like I say, the two games that jump out to me are Grimsby away and Bradford away. And it was purely because I saw the determination, the fight. Neither of the results are there at important parts of the season, of course, and all of them points count. And there's many occasions on the flip side of that where the performance has been there and the points haven't been there. It's really difficult. But I think what I wanted to see, especially from the Wimbledon game, was what I saw against Grimsby, what I saw against Bradford, and we didn't get that. But I think going back to the performances and the results, of course, results matter. And it really does depend where you're going to finish in the season. If results don't matter to you, you essentially aren't going to end up in the top three. Good performances aren't going to be consistent enough throughout the season that convert into enough points. It doesn't work like that. And unfortunately, I don't think our style of play necessarily this season has led us into this playoff campaign on a good foot. I think, like you say, especially in that away leg, it was never gonna go for us the way we were kind of trying to get the ball in the box. And like we say, that ended up with being one shot on target. And I just think what I have seen in the past couple of seasons is that style of play getting better, the performances getting better. Would I rather watch as how we used to play under Neil Ardley, and I liked Ardley through the time that he was with Notts, or do I prefer how we've changed into possession style football? I prefer the football now. I think it's been more entertaining since the brothers have come in, absolutely. But again, it's the result side of that at the same time. I think going into the last 10 games of the season, that's when those performances don't really matter, and fans tend to not care as much, especially if you're going into it in a playoff place or in a chance of getting an automatic. But I think throughout the season, I don't want to be a team. I wouldn't want to watch Wimbledon week in, week out, because, well, from what I've seen, Wimbledon fans might absolutely jump at it and say that they're the best team in the league from what they've seen. But from what I've seen in their style of football, I wouldn't want to watch that all season long. But essentially, they have got that step further than us, and I think that that's not just because of how they've played over the season. It's how they've been able to go into the playoff campaign and the mentality that they've had. And I'm sure going into that, they were expecting to get automatics as well, with how the playoffs have kind of, and the season's petered out at the end. So it's a difficult one. I don't personally think there's going to be loads of movement, especially anytime soon. Really, the conversation will then turn to that retained list, and I'm sure there'll be a lot to say there. And there's like you say, there's a few interesting ones, especially with McGoldrick being the big one. But I think most of the other players that are out of contract will probably, that's kind of it for them. And I don't know. I don't think there'll be a lot of movement elsewhere. So I think, like you say, we might get a statement from the brothers, and I'm sure we will, whether that's really backing Maynard, because they're going to have to say something. Of course, they're going to come out and say we're disappointed by the end of the season, and especially how our playoff campaign has gone. But I think it'll come out and it'll be, we're still backing Stuart Maynard, and hopefully we're going to put a little bit more money into the club, sign a few players, and really see how we can move on into next season.
Yeah, the big conundrum for me, I think, is that personally, I believe we've almost reached a glass ceiling with the person, with our approach and the philosophy. And unless you are going to start tweaking the philosophy quite a bit more, I don't think the way we play with the personnel that we've got and the coaching staff that we've got will get us out of this division. I really don't. If the brothers look at outcomes and modelling, and those 6 clubs I've just mentioned that have got automatic have a certain type of manager. They all play a certain type of football. All 6. There's no one else really. Crawley crept through in the playoffs, come straight back down. There's no one else really doing it the way that we do it. And one of the challenges, which I thought was Chris's excellent post early, we're a big fish now in this division. We are a big fish. That carries levels of responsibility and expectation. And my worry at the moment for Stuart was that Saturday for me was an excellent opportunity to do something different. You've got Jatta out, you've got McGoldrick out. Do something different. Play a different formation. Move players around. Put Jarvis up top. Whatever it is, do something that Wimbledon wouldn't necessarily be expecting, and give it a go. Yet we didn't. We played exactly the same system and dropped players into it who are not necessarily comfortable. They've not had much game time, and it felt so flat and so predictable. And you've got to mix things up, change things up. You kind of would want to have seen 5 strikers up top, big centre halves, and just launch the Dayaks, lump it, put them under pressure, win a free kick. Jody Jones scores from 20 yards. There was one little passage of play, going on another rant now, with this whole possession based. Jody Jones, midway through the first half, inverted, obviously, cuts inside, so he's facing into the pitch on his left foot, and he looks up, and he's midway in our half, and he's kind of looking for a diag. Does Traore run beyond the centre halves, try and run them? Are there some channel balls to play? And he kind of looks, and there's nothing on. There's nothing on. So then he plays it back. Someone else plays it square. Someone else plays it back. And I said to Richard Stanton, who was sat next to me, or he was stood up. As soon as he didn't play the diag, I said, we'll have 8 or 9 passes in our own half now. I was wrong. We had 10. Then we lost the ball on the halfway line. And just that little 30 seconds for me encapsulates where we kind of are now. Now, you know, for possession stats, all these bloody online, all these statisticians, they never kind of like to admit how they work possession stats out. Because you would think, I've said this before, but we've got I think got nearly 800 people online at the minute. So not everyone will necessarily know this. When we talk about possession, you would automatically assume 90 minutes. How many minutes do we have the ball? So if we have it 60 minutes and they have it 30 minutes, then that's 2/3 possession to us, 1/3 possession to the opposition. It's not how it's done. It's the number of completed passes that one side completes compared to the other. So in that case, when I'm talking about Jody Jones, doesn't have a diag, a long ball out. We play 8 passes, okay? Then they intercept it, right? They complete, let's say, 1 pass, yeah? Or have a shot after 2 passes, right? So we've not got the ball out of our box, out of our half, 8 passes. They have 2 passes, shoot. Right. The way that then works is total number of passes in that passage of play is 10. We've had 8 of them. They've had 2. So therefore, not in that passage of play that has resulted in Wimbledon having a shot on goal, we've had 80% possession. Wimbledon have had 20, but they've had a shot on goal. And that is the, for me, on my soapbox, the sheer meaninglessness of possession stats and things. It's a cottage industry that seems to be perpetuated by more and more and more and more analysts reanalyzing and recalibrating and producing statistics that are entirely meaningless. They don't affect the game. They don't affect the game. And if you don't believe me, I did a big interview with Howard Wilkinson about 4 years ago, and I was playing it back yesterday afternoon because I kind of wanted. Howard was a young 35-year-old coach when he came to Notts in 1981. He got Notts promoted alongside Jimmy Cyril in his first full season. He set the academy system up. He's the last English manager to win the Premier League with Leeds in the 90s. So he knows what he's talking about. And he's also a coach as well as a manager. And it is brilliant when he talks about the job of a football manager. And we should all watch it. We should all listen to it. I'll post the links. And he said, he said, I never refer to good football. He said, in my books, there is no such thing as good football. He says, there is effective football. Effective football gets you points. Good football looks good. But what does that mean? And he talks about Manchester City. Holding the ball is one way to do it. But that's not necessarily a better way of doing it to get points than a team that might go more direct. And it's absolutely brilliant. And he says the job of a manager is to create the best possible opportunity for his players to win, not performance, to win a game of football. And it's brilliant. You listen to him, and he was at Notts 43 years ago. Football is no different. People will tell you it is different. Methodologies, fitness levels, of course, they've improved. But, you know, never lose sight of what we're trying to achieve. And I worry a bit for the brothers, and I worry for Stuart, and I worry for Notts, because I'm not sure in its current format we can actually go much further. And this whole momentum that we've built up, 10,000 fans, I'm telling you now, you can watch lovely football, Chloe, and love it, right? If we've got 4 more years in League Two, I promise you, average crowds are not 10,000. I promise you they're not. You'll still be there, trogging all over the country every game. I will be, Jurgen will be, half our flock will be. But sometimes the people that say we must support Notts in a certain way, they'll be the ones that don't come and watch it. And I do think we're at a crossroads at the minute. Retained list, let's just pick up on that. So Stuart said on Saturday, days off Sunday and Monday, players in tomorrow. So I would expect to get an announcement on the retained list either late tomorrow, probably more likely Wednesday. As many of you have said, there aren't too many players. I don't think there will be too many surprises on the retained list. Clearly, there are certain players that have, if you like, been surplus to requirements for a little while now. So your Adam Chicksons, Kyle Camerons, those I would not be expecting to be offered a contract. The big one, obviously, is David McGoldrick. No one really knows at the moment. I believe the club have offered him a new contract. Equally, I understand that he's already had offers from League One and from abroad. So we'll have to see kind of what the pull is of finishing his career at Notts. He still feels he can play one, if not two more seasons in professional football. I'm sure everybody here would love for him to be staying at the club. Don't think it's a shoo-in at the moment. Don't think it's a shoo-in. A lot of other clubs do kind of really covet him. And here's one, and this is not, I've been told this, but I wouldn't be surprised. So Paul Warne was at Derby and was the manager of Didsey, and they got on very well. Paul Warne has now just taken over the manager's job at MK Dons. Join the dots. Now that would be a kicker, wouldn't it? Now, I'm not saying that happens or anything, but I think David's going to have quite a few suitors, and it will be interesting to see kind of how that develops. Right. Okay. Some more messages. Duncan Cox, you have a point to an extent, Paul, but really what you're illustrating is the importance of stats in context, at least in my opinion. Stats can be very useful, but they have to be used carefully. Give me one example, please, Duncan, of how stats can be very useful. I await them. Okay. Luke Beardsley. Sometimes I'd rather the Kevin Nolan style of play, get the ball in their half as quick as we can, then play, rather than the mind-numbing passing around at the back. Luke Williams got us through the National League playoffs, continuing to play the same style without hang on, there's a typo there. Without something to do with our style of play. Give Didsey the captaincy, says Adam Kent. If we did, I hope it lasts longer than Macaulay Langstaff. That must be some quiz question. Appointed captain, never played a game. Richard Elvian. Problem as a captain for Didsey will be the number of games he plays. Neil Fletcher, football aside, as much as there is some good work off the pitch, there are some poor decisions being made too, and communication has also dropped. We need a reset, says Neil Fletcher. I must admit, I've seldom, and we spoke about this on the morning, Chloe, of the Wimbledon game and also the home game, I've seldom, for a playoff campaign, witnessed such a flat atmosphere. Yes, we get into it on the game day itself in the crowd and all the rest of it, but the week leading up to it, it was so flat. There were no rallying calls. Other clubs put out free flags and banners and that sort of thing. We didn't really do a lot, and clearly the 12,000 gate was in a large part due to being arranged to a Saturday night. But that's still really not what you would have been looking for to say we're going into a playoff game with tons of optimism. So I do worry a little bit at the minute. And I probably would agree with most people on here tonight. The brothers are in a difficult position, and I think the club do their comms and PR very, very well with Nick Richardson. I think there needs to be some form of statement from the brothers, the review of the season. Now, that may be taking place as we speak, sitting down with the manager, sitting down with the new head of football, and going through it all, and to take on board one of the poster's points, accountability, responsibility, not blame. I do think some form of statement would at least address some of the issues. AD Clark says, if Didsey truly believes that Stuart Maynard and the squad is good enough to get promotion, I think he'll stay. I think what he decides will be very interesting. Lee says, if Stuart stays, I believe attendances will drop by 1 to 2k at best. So you can strike 40k off the books per home game at least. Andrew Gregory, as soon as the lineup came out against Wimbledon on Saturday, most of us thought we couldn't score 2 goals from with that team. We're good in midfield, says John Parnham. But if we don't address the front line and not rely on 2 star players, we may not solve our goal scoring problems. I'll say another thing, Chloe. I worry a bit for Stuart at the minute, because he is now the focal point of 99% of all fans. And when I was watching him on Saturday, and in 1 or 2 other games, he's clearly been very unfortunate to have lost his number 2 and number 3. They've not been replaced. There's a former analyst who's kind of now been, promoted very rapidly to be the assistant. You do have Stuart, you have Sam Slocum, you have the goalkeeping coach. No Didsey, as far as we could see on Saturday. And I think sometimes when you are kind of the focal point of everything, which he is, I think sometimes you can almost become paralysed by the focus. Let's not forget that when Luke Williams got Notts promoted, literally days after he got promoted, he went down with pneumonia, quite a serious bout of pneumonia. So this takes an awful toll on people. And although I will always brutally judge everybody on results, I do think he's been dealt a poor pack of cards since Christmas. I thought recruitment was very, very poor, did not address the urgency and maximise our chances of promotion. Then when his 2 members of his coaching staff left, they weren't replaced. And I think that makes him a very isolated and a very lonely man who is actually, and I'm not trying to cry sympathy here, but actually puts him under a huge amount of pressure. And I think, and I've seen managers when I've been working at Leicester City and other clubs, once they start to get that siege around them, it's like a fog. It's like a brain fog. And sometimes when you need to make quick in-game decisions, it's very hard to do. So I do genuinely worry for him a little bit at the minute, because I think he's had to shoulder over the last 3 to 4 months more than any Football League manager actually should have to shoulder without additional help.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I say, there's been a lot going on this season, like we said, behind closed doors, a lot we won't know about. But from that fan's perspective, there's a hell of a lot that goes into how we've got here from, like you say, January. He will have come from a place, again, from where he's come from, not having a full-time coaching job under his belt. That was a big step up. We all knew that. That will have put something on him. To then have your close coaches around you and the close team that you've got around you start to kind of leave you on your own, essentially. And like you say, not get replaced. We kind of promoted from within, from a data analyst that we had. Like you say, we've got Sam Slocum that have kind of stepped up since. And let's not forget, he was then having to play games that, again, we probably weren't expecting him to play. So that's another person from the sidelines that, again, is kind of had to move on. And like we say, I can't remember which game it was at home when Maynard was up in the stands. That, again, was another game where those topics came to light a little bit more. And like you say, going into that Wimbledon game, because it's the most fresh game, I think, like you say, even before that, fans really had started to plateau this season. I don't think anybody was confident, not even having lost the first game against Wimbledon, because I do think we put in that decent performance. It's that buzzword again. And I still wasn't positive or confident really going into it. There was always going to be something, and there was always a reason for me to go to the game. We were always still in it, but it was almost like the feeling around the club for a very long time now this season wasn't positive. And like you say, that little glimmer of hope left us at 11:30 again, I think, when it was the team we all expected to be put out. Again, we will never understand and we will never know the reasons as to why certain players don't play. We don't see training. There's so many different aspects, but of course the first thing that we look at is the only man standing there in front of us all making those decisions. So everything is unfortunately going to have to funnel through him, which I wouldn't like it to be me, absolutely. And like you say, these cards that he's been dealt from not only refereeing decisions and injuries, and you don't know what happened in January in terms of what he asked for and maybe the budget he was given, and how all of that recruitment process works. It's a really difficult one, and like I agree with you that in terms of that crossroads, and I don't know what happens now, but I absolutely do. I do feel for the guy, because it's a real tough task, especially when you've got a lot of vocal fans now quite clearly not on side. And like you say, I think the reason that it's been a topic for a while now is because a lot of people have sat on the fence, and maybe this was kind of the final straw for a few people. But yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing that kind of did lose me a little bit was the Wimbledon game, and was let's try something different. Let's do something different. And obviously we all know we haven't had everybody fit all season, especially going into this last game. Jodie didn't look fit to me. Austin didn't look fit to me. They didn't look fit the week before. We've got Robertson, who we've almost had to push to even be sat on the bench. Now, I don't doubt that he wasn't fit, because if he was fit, I'm sure he would have played. And there's so many question marks. But unfortunately, as a fan, we can only comment on what we can see. And what we can see felt like a really predictable lineup. And everybody that I spoke to before and during the game, no one would have chosen that lineup, but everyone would have predicted that lineup. And then the game was predictable based on the lineup we were presented with. And I don't think it was much to a surprise how that game panned out. And yeah, like I say, of course, we can sit now, the season's closed, and look at all of these different variables as to how we've got to where we are. And there is no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong opinion. But what I'm sure we can all agree with is it's not just the style of play that's got us here. It's not just players, individual players. It's not just lineups. It's not just injuries. It's not just refereeing decisions. There's a hell of a lot that has gone into this, and especially behind closed doors, which makes this debate even more difficult and makes it even more difficult to understand where we go next. So it's going to be an interesting couple of days, couple of months, and then we'll see where we are at the start of the season. Like I say, I personally don't think much will change in terms of personnel. I hope we get some new coaches in if it is Maynard that's going to be taking us, and I'm sure he's going to have some demands in himself and some reasons as to why he thinks we haven't been successful. So I mean, again, it will be based on results, and I don't know whether we'll go into next season under the same coach as such rather than management. And then if we're only going to give it 10 games and let's see where we are 10 games in before Christmas, are we taking a backward step? Because if it's not top three, he's potentially going to get sacked. But again, I wouldn't like to be an owner. I wouldn't like to be a coach. I wouldn't like to be a manager, because unfortunately they are in the limelight of all of this. And that is why they get paid the big bucks. And we can only sit here and comment on our opinions and what we've got in front of us. But yeah, like I say, the debate is so difficult because there's so many different variables as to how this season's panned out.
Yeah, and I think that some, the two sides of Stuart debate, and they tend to antagonize each other. I'm not aware of any Notts fan that didn't want Stuart to be successful. Not one. But I think sometimes people want to identify with Stuart, but it can be hard. He's not he's not like a Martin Allen-esque that brings play, makes these statements and all the rest of it. And like two of the most popular things Stuart has done, right, was one shushing Bradford, yeah, and the other one was when he kicked the ball down the tunnel and got a card, and it was, oh, great, well done, Stuart, well done. And I just think, it's reached a pretty critical point now, but you want him to just do something that kind of gets him to resonate with supporters, and the tricks of the trade. Martin Allen tells the great story when we played Brighton 10 years ago, when Notts needed a point. I think Brighton were being promoted, last home game of the season, last day of the season, and Martin orchestrated with his staff to have a fight with Gus Poyet and their coaching staff after half an hour. It was prearranged because he wanted to get Notts fans up and at them. And sure enough, there's a little, it's all handbags and a scuffle. But it's those kind of things. You kind of want Stuart to do something, get behind him. Wimbledon are clearly, Premier League standard when it comes to shirt pulling. Riley Harbottle going down that line, all the way down the first half in front of the Notts fans, steals 5 yards, another long throw, heads out, steals 5 yards, another. He went from one end of the pitch to the other with 4 long throws, nicking 5 to 10 yards. And yes, the ref shouldn't let him get away with it, but we should be doing more, as players. And you just, sometimes Stuart, which I'm sure he's not in training and all the rest of it, but he comes across as just to be a bit flat and a bit dour and just energise fans. And as I say, I think at the minute, his big challenge is, and I've said this before, I think he will still be in charge. This is not done with any knowledge or I'm not being told anything, right? This is just a personal opinion. I think the brothers will view, we've reached the playoffs. That's progression. We know we need to strengthen the playing squad. We know we need to get some more backroom staff in. And I have a feeling that's what they will do. There is a new head of football coming, either coming or coming in. I suspect he's going to be tasked with bringing some more players in. But it don't half put Stuart, if he's still here, under huge pressure in that first game on the first weekend of August. And that is my worry for him. He almost becomes the story every day of the week when we're watching Notts County. And that I think it's getting to be a difficult position for the club at the moment. But, maybe the brothers have got it all in hand. So not a problem. Duncan Cox, I challenged him on the use of, or the benefits of stats. Fair play, he's come back. Admittedly, I'm thinking more in terms of the sports science side of things, managing players physically, knowing how performances compare and how much players are working as I'm in that particular field, all of which I would agree with. But for me, they're 1%ers, 2%ers. We will talk next week with Stel about the whole sports science, managing injuries, managing minutes. We've heard managing minutes, taking players off in FA Cup games more than any other season I can ever remember. It also happens to have coincided with one of the worst crops of injuries we've had this season. Now, if that's all down to bad luck, which some people say it is, well, what's the point of managing minutes? For me, you can't have it both ways. But we'll pick up that with Stel next week. Now, there is a second one from Duncan. He put 1 of 2. But as a possession-based team, if you have ended the game with a very low possession stat, you'd know something was up. I agree. But I'll admit that if our possession stat was 10%, but we won, no one would care. My point, without over-labouring it, Duncan, is that we have dominated the ball. That's the buzz phrase among the new generation of coaches. Against Doncaster at home, got battered. Dominated the ball against Wimbledon in both games. And to be honest, well beaten over the course of the 180 minutes. So I'm not quite sure what more you can do in terms of possession-based metrics. Clearly, it's about ball getting it into the final third and measuring those kind of things. But, look, we are where we are. Let's just pick up some last ones before we finish. Ian Hayward. Stuart does speak to the fourth official quite a lot from what I have seen. I agree, but why aren't his coaching staff doing that? And why aren't the players in the ear of the ref more? For me, if you can't beat them, join them, because Wimbledon were pretty adept at it from all over the park. What I would say is I thought the referee wasn't too bad Saturday. And did you notice he didn't allow the trainer on once for any of the Wimbledon players when they went down injured? He stopped the physio coming on, and they all got up miraculously. John Paul, we dominated the ball against Cheltenham, and what was the final score? There's no set way to win games, says Richard Elvin. I totally agree. Errol Taylor, possession is irrelevant if it's all in our own half. Going into a new season with a divided fan base, says Ian Cooksey, is not a situation to be favoured. Duncan Cox, fair play, Paul. Would love to have a longer conversation with you about it, unhampered by comment character limits. Oh, that's a lovely phrase, Duncan. What a lovely phrase. We'll gladly do that, and make sure you tune in for next week's show with Stel, because that will be something that I'm sure that we will be addressing. Matthew Hoyland, new director of football, signals new direction, albeit because Football Radar let the previous guy go to Swansea. That does take a bit of time, which he has had now. New Football Radar man will have his say as well. It's an interesting appointment. Does have experience at Portsmouth and in Europe. Originally, I think I'm right in saying, started out as an analyst intern covering Serie B in Italy for the brothers. So at least there is some longevity of relationship between the brothers and our new head of football. Ian Hayward, scrap possession football and back to 4-4-2 next season. Jurgen Halligan, Chesterfield had 76% possession against Walsall in the 2-1 defeat, says it all. AD Clark says, I think we should have beat Wimbledon at home, agreed. So Stuart played it safe with some predictable tactics away. If he'd have changed it and we lost 4-0, his job was on the line. He's not a risk taker. It's an interesting point, AD. I wouldn't disagree with you. I think he needs to start taking some risks, though, at some point. There's the old head coach at Feyenoord, says Jason Cartwright, called Hugh Janus. He was spotted at the Lane Donny at home. Probably more to do with the fact he knows the brothers. I'm not sure he would move from Feyenoord to Meadow Lane. Maybe he would. I don't know. But look, there isn't a vacancy at the minute. Anyway, we've done plenty tonight. We are hovering just below the 1,000 live listeners and viewers at the minute, which I think is a record. I think it's a record. Chloe, thank you ever so much for joining us tonight. Final thoughts. You would have covered probably more miles than most of us if you've done about 18 away games from Bolton. Does this in any way, shape or form, diminish your enthusiasm for Notts County?
Of course not. Of course it's disappointing, like we say. But season tickets bought and more miles are going to be clocked up. I think my biggest disappointment as a fan is looking at the grounds that I've got to tick off. That was the disappointing one for me. I think just to know where I'm going back to next season isn't the most inviting. Yes, will I be there for most of them? I'm sure I will. But I was really looking at those grounds in League One that I haven't had the chance to do yet. So maybe a possible cup run next year, that'd be nice to get a few more ticked off.
Yeah, I mean, my son was saying that because looking at it, there was Cardiff coming down, wasn't there? Hull didn't come down, I don't think, in the end. But there were a few, and I think he was rooting for Derby to come down as well. Yeah. These are all grounds, surprising as it is, that we've never been to. And I don't think there'll be a single new ground, will there, next year that we haven't played on. before. I don't think there's a single new one.
No.
Don't think there's a single new one. Obviously, we've done Barnet. I'm just trying to think who else is likely to come up in the playoffs. Yeah, we've done all them as well. Yeah, we've done all them.
I think there's only Bristol Rovers and Gillingham that I've not done, but I do think we will have played them. So they're just ones that I've personally not done. So just the two for me to tick off.
24 away games for me, says Jurgen from Ollerton, not quite Lancashire, but Jurgen, top man. You've done very, very well this season. We'll be doing it all again next season. Dale Pikett, I did 3,585 miles from Sheffield watching Notts last season. Yeah, I mean, look, it staggers me the miles and the devotion that supporters give to following not just Notts but any of their football clubs. When I was at the shirt sponsors presentation about a month ago, I said I would mention his name, and I've forgotten until now. It was Paul Batchford. He comes down from somewhere north of Edinburgh over the Forth Bridge. Not every game, but a lot of them. And he actually came down for the sponsors presentation. He sponsors Sam Austin. He drove all the way down from, as I said, somewhere north of the Forth Bridge, meet Sam Austin in the Nest for an hour and a half, and drove all the way back up again. I mean, it's frightening what the lengths to which people will go to. But yeah, I'm smiling. I'm not going to read it out. That's not a bad post from Kyle Motson. That's not a bad post from Kyle Motson. Right. On that note, you'll have to hastily look at what Kyle Motson's written now, won't you? Right. We're 49 short. Sorry about that. We're nearly done the 1,000. I'd also just like to mention, and this kind of puts everything into perspective. Many of you will know Kim Wolster, who I would put up in that elite category of Notts super fans, and the Wolster family, full stop, have been wonderful supporters of the club up and down the country. Kim, unfortunately, has had quite a bad health update, and I don't think she would mind me saying that it's unfortunately stage 4 cancer. And so there is a GoFundMe page been set up, which I said I would mention tonight. Kim has some kind of football ambitions she would like to fulfill this summer. And any monies raised from the GoFundMe will be used to get Kim along to fulfill some of her football ambitions. Obviously, the number one ambition is for Notts to be promoted, but that might cost a bit more than the GoFundMe page. But I think Notts are going to put something on for her at the club in the summer as well. So if you did just Google Kim Wolster GoFundMe, you would see the GoFundMe page if you felt you were able to support that. But as I say, Kim is a proper Notts fan, home and away, up and down the country for many years, as is all of the Wolster family. Okay, on that note, I think we're done, Chloe. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon. Regards to your granddad, as always. We will be back next Monday, Tuesday. We're doing, we'll probably do 2 1-hour specials. And what I want from you is to send me any requests for subject matter and topics, not necessarily specific in the 74th minute of the game, so-and-so didn't score or whatever. But if there are key themes and topics you would like Snell and I to delve into in terms of a proper end of season review, please send that to us and then we will dive into that. Thank you ever so much for all your participation. I think it's a record number of viewers tonight, record number of messages. I'm going to lie down in a darkened room in a moment. Thank you, everybody. We'll all try to come to terms with it, won't we? As I say, it is literally, I was working this out, I think within 6 weeks we'll be going to our first pre-season friendly. It's frightening, isn't it, really? But anyway, bound to be Alfreton. We always go to Alfreton, don't we, pre-season? Thank you very much indeed. Look, thank you, Chloe, as always.
Thanks again, Paul, and thanks everyone for tuning in as always, and hopefully a bit more of a positive season next year.
Yeah, so not quite the last show tonight. Next week with Stell. Thank you very much indeed. Look forward to catching you soon. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.